Now it's live. All right, everybody, wherever you are joining us, whether on the English side of the Atlantic or the American side, welcome back to the latest episode of the Daily Gooner Pod here on StreamYard. Now, I am joining you from the States. I'm Raphael, joining me and joining you from London this evening. Our co-founder, co-host, Sam. Welcome, Sam.
Hello, mate. I hope everything is well.
Things are well, and of course, filling the third seat, our semi-regular. Good to have him back. Welcome back, Jacob.
Cheers, always a pleasure.
Always, always. And again, when we left you last week, we said Arsenal was beginning a very compressed schedule, 3 matches in 6 days. They'd won the first. Liverpool was looming 2 days later. A lot of optimism, a lot of crossing fingers, a lot of hope. Not the result we hoped for. 2-0 Liverpool victory. At the same time, I think Jacob, there was a lot of good to take away, despite the result. Let's start with the first half, or really maybe the first 60 minutes, where it looked like Arsenal was the team most likely to take the lead.
Yeah, I think Arteta described it best. Like, between the two boxes, we did everything he wanted us to do. We played offside well, we broke lines well, particularly Partey, like absolutely phenomenal in the centre of that midfield. He was taking the ball in and distributing it out despite all the pressure around him. And, you can't really fault a single player in that, in majority of the game. Between the two boxes, we stood toe to toe to them and probably even looked the better team on a lot of occasions. But I think that period of play just before the goal where Alisson made an outstanding save, and unfortunately Ramsdale wasn't at his best. But how many times has he saved us this season? So I'm not going to fault him, but those moments of quality and consistency, and I guess just the little movements and stuff that are still coming together for us in the boxes.
All right, Sam, let's talk about one of the matchups. It's certainly maybe the one that had me kind of leaning forward in my seat, rising out of my seat on several occasions in the first half, was watching Martinelli on the left wing going against Trent Alexander-Arnold seemed to kind of have his way both inside, but especially to the outside. A lot of attacks on the goal.
Yeah, and the thing with Martinelli that I find this season is he's playing with a lot more confidence. He's playing with a lot more composure, and he's being more decisive in the way that he attacks the fullback. Because, as you say, he'll go one way, but if he tries it, say, 3 times and comes off 2 out of 3, the next time he's going inside, or depending on how the ball's coming across to him, he's adapting to where the ball should be going, because some people will have the ball come across their body and go straight down the line, or you be a bit unpredictable and then go where the ball's been played across, you come back the way the ball's come, because ultimately when defenders are shaping, and I find this with Trent quite a lot actually, it's when the ball comes across to the winger, he's already showing his hand, and he's already showing, going, okay, then go down the line. So if you cut in across him, he's got to change his whole balance, his whole shape. And then at that point, it only takes a split second, but he's already on the back foot. So for me, I find with Martinelli, as I say, a lot more composure, a lot more decisiveness, and he's now bringing out the party tricks when he's in the box. Because when he got to the past Trent, and then I think it was Henderson come across, there's a cheeky little nutmeg, and then try to get the ball across. So for me, I think that with him playing with this amount of confidence, it's good for us. It's only going to get better. It wouldn't surprise me it if it's not long before he starts getting the Saka treatment. And I know we'll go on to that in a little bit, but I think with Martinelli, a lot of people called for him to be up front as well. But what we're seeing right now is the best of Martinelli out on the wing because we're seeing a switch of play. So if we're on the right hand side, he's 1-on-1 with the fullback. It's a big switch or a quick play across the field so that we can get the ball to him. He's got ample space to attack that fullback. Trent, in this example, use his speed, his power, and his trickery to get past the player, and that's where we're seeing a lot of success on both sides, actually. But I think that we really need to hone this a lot more because it will hurt a lot of teams.
You raise an interesting point, and I think people, it's just born of impatience. People see Saka getting open inside and out on the right, and being very decisive and being very good at his decision making. Keeping his defender off balance. So we're starting to see, as you said, Martinelli started to do that with more consistency. It seems Saka's a little bit farther ahead of him. Of course, he's been playing a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
He is the Arsenal player with the most minutes this season. By some degree, it does seem, and with only one match a week, it looks like the manager is very comfortable with him. But I think a lot of us want to say, hey, put one of them forward. We see. I think the players show it a little bit too, Jacob, that early on, we saw Martinelli getting around on the outside and feeding crosses. And we know that, winning crosses in the box, in the air, that's not Lacazette's strength. And it seems that both of these players at some point, as they're frustrated, want to cut inside. And it seemed that the match went on cut inside more. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm of the opinion, I think I'm kind of with Sam, it's just let them continue to develop their strengths and become more unpredictable. I think the goals will come. I think we're all still thinking about that opportunity, about the 86th minute where Martinelli was set up and he rolled it across the goal and just missed the goal by about a foot. But again, I think that's the kind of goal Saka was missing earlier last year, when he was starting to come around with him, and he's hitting those now. I think those once those learning curves align, I think that's what we're really hoping for. But your opinion's yours. So
yeah, in some ways, I think they're almost learning the opposite attributes to what. So Saka last season, on both sides, we saw it start on the left. He's really good kind of playmaker. He'd break the lines. He could get a good ball in. But there wasn't much of a goal threat. Martinelli had goal threat, but that was kind of all he had. Like, they're now both starting to apply their talent to kind of match awareness in game situations instead of just, Saka on the left wing driving down and putting in a cross, or Martinelli just cutting in. We're seeing them now develop the other side of the game. Saka's getting more goals. Martinelli, some of those balls he got past on the outside of the man and put in, although they were cleared fairly easy by Liverpool, you'd have to think a different type of striker, such as the Firmino goal, that just little cut across the goalkeeper and a little flick. Martinelli's balls were good balls in. It was just didn't have the people to finish them off at the moment. So I think they are developing really well, and the fact that they are developing both sides of the game is obviously going to benefit us a lot. And yeah, I think the key part is Saka obviously started to apply talent to a game situation a lot earlier. Martinelli was still kind of relying on just instinct and talent, which in the Europa League and stuff was absolutely fine last season because of the quality of the opposition. But that is ultimately why he was held back in the Premier League and didn't get the minutes that quite a lot of fans were calling for. But yeah, now that he's showing a kind of complete package of the game and the age they both are, I can't wait to see them in a couple of years.
moving backwards, Sam, let's talk a lot more about. We talked about him a lot at the beginning of the year. He's kind of fallen off the radar, but I think we've given this his run of form, certainly since they came back from Dubai. We need to really zero in on Thomas Partey, who's taken like a couple of quantum leaps. So that obviously, his confidence on the ball, his ability to spin out of trouble, he can pass out of trouble, but now he's showing an ability to kind of spin out of trouble, dribble out of trouble, start an attack from the back. And I've noticed the goals haven't come, but that spray that we always bemoaned, like, don't hit it, Thomas, don't shoot it. He's really tightened up his accuracy, certainly the last 3 or 4 matches.
Yeah, and I'm sure Jacob and Ryan, when he comes back, will agree with me. When we're in the stadium, you really watch Thomas Partey and the way that he moves around the pitch. And the geese is an absolute Rolls Royce. Like, he is quite demanding of the ball. He will always put himself about. He will track. He will also cover whoever needs covering. I think that his role within the team has changed a little bit, because before you're looking at him more as a box to box 8. Now you're looking at him more of a 6, sitting in front of the back 4, being that controller in front of them. So for me, I think with Thomas Partey, he's getting back to the Atletico form, but I also think that he's now adapted to the Premier League, because before, you think about the intensity and the amount of niggly little injuries that he was getting, touching wood that he doesn't get anymore. But I firmly believe that with him in the side, he can control most midfields on his own, and that allows the 2 8s or an 8 and a deeper 10 to really push on with Saka and Odegaard. So realistically, for me, Thomas Partey is the key component in this Arsenal side, even transitioning forward to back and back to forward.
Yeah, I'm going with that. Jacob is, in addition to starting the attacks, moving forward, his ability just to, wherever he is on the pitch, to read plays, get in passing lanes, dispossess the opposition of the ball. It seems like we just see that more and more. He's, as you said, he's dialed in, and he covers so much ground on his own. That's such an amazing thing to have and say that's my team. That's my midfielder. Right?
Yeah,
that's for you, Jacob. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So no, I mean, obviously earlier in the season he made those comments about he hadn't adapted. He was only playing at a 4 out of 10, and I thought that was a bit harsh on himself. However, we all knew he wasn't playing as well as he could, and it's almost like since that kind of acknowledgement of his own form, he's really gone away and worked on some stuff. Because we tried him. I think it was in the Europa League last year. We tried him as the like sole holding midfielder while playing 2 advanced players ahead of him, and it really didn't work. He was bypassed a lot. He couldn't get the ball. Like, he just looked overran. And I thought that was the end of that experiment of Partey as the 6 and breaking up play. But he is really, really coming to his own. And he looks an absolute dominant midfielder in every midfield he's been in this season, both in terms of covering the ground, breaking up plays. Now, we don't tend to see big tackles from him. He's more intercepting or just little knocks away just in the nick of time. He's certainly not a crunching tackler. But yeah, his ability, particularly on that receiving the ball from a defender, facing his own goal, and the awareness to just know where the other midfielders are, just turn away and break the lines. That is a sign of just pure confidence and the way he's adapted to the league. And he's got to be aware of it himself. Like, he's shown self-awareness of his own form now, And I think he's now just enjoying life at the Emirates.
Yeah, he just looks so much composed, and I think that, to go back to the original point, I think his offensive form is tied to that. He just feels so much more at ease, and he's still willing to shoot. He's always been willing to shoot, but now he's troubling the keeper a lot more. Sam, let's move to the back line. We know we haven't seen Tomiyasu in a while because of his calf injury, and the team is being very deliberate with that. And we've talked about this in the previous episode, that Cedric has given them an excuse to be very deliberate with him. His form has been quite good since he's filled in, but it seems that they have different roles. I know when Tomiyasu was there, they have Tierney moving forward in the attack a lot, and Tomiyasu would kind of play up and then tuck in with White and with Gabriel, kind of a back three. And it seems now that maybe it's because the Odegaard and Saka are so in sync that we're seeing Cedric giving the freedom to go forward. We're not seeing as much as Tierney. I've read some grumbling online. Everybody's looking for nitpicking, but it seems that Tierney is kind of taking some of that, because we're not seeing him in his normal bombing role. But is that because that's his role in the interim now, is to be that kind of the fullback who hangs back more than normal?
I wouldn't say it's a case of him being a fullback that has to hang back more than normal. I think that purely, previously we literally just went down the left-hand side. Every attack, we went down the left-hand side, and it was very predictable how Arsenal was going to build up. Even if we was going down the right-hand side, you knew it would be a big old switch across to the left-hand side, and whoever was playing there, Kieran Tierney would be on the overlap and for him to cross the ball in. Now we're not doing that so much. I wouldn't say even so much. We're not doing that at all, really. If we're doing the switch across the pitch, it's in the final third where Martinelli would be, and you would see Tierney make an overlapping run in that respect then. But I think it is a change of role for him. I think that we're trying to be more asymmetrical across the pitch, so that if the right hand side's going, Tierney tucks in or doesn't push as high. Likewise, if you're going down the left, same with Cedric, he tucks in or doesn't go as high, because we are exploiting space and trying to get a one-on-one with fullbacks. And if need be, that's where we see our fullbacks overlap to help out and really exploit and open the defense. So for me, I think that we've seen a change of role with Kieran Tierney, and I don't think that people are realizing that to the extent of what they should be doing.
Jacob, does that get to the manager's comment and the players' comment on the manager wanting his squad to be less predictable? Because this is part of what Sam was saying, and we knew that certainly when Aubameyang was around, they were extremely left-sided. They've been more right-sided, and that's probably because the production is better. But we'll talk about Granit Xhaka in a minute. But it does seem that Sam's talking about the fact that it's not so clear now what they're going to do, how they're going to do it.
No, and I think that is partly because we are now developing these patterns of play as well. They've got several plays and patterns, and it does work both sides of the pitch. Whereas before, we weren't really playing as a team. It was, right, we had Tierney on the left, Aubameyang on the left. At the time, Saka was out left as well. Our best players are just out left. We'll just go down the left and hope something works out. So I think, again, it comes back to the work that has been done on the training ground and the game awareness within the team and the whole cohesion. Yeah, but we are definitely a lot less predictable than we were. There's still moments you kind of see some of that old Arsenal, and ironically, it does come from Cedric sometimes on the right. As good as he's been, he gets forward and lumps in a cross, and you're looking at going, There's no one there. So I think sometimes, obviously, players' instincts are, they do show. Cedric's a fullback who likes to get forward and cross, and he's been at clubs where that's worked great. Just as, Tierney used to get forward all the time and just put in a cross, which they were good crosses, but they weren't suited to the team. Whereas now they've got all this understanding of each other's strengths and weaknesses, and there's a real kind of character and cohesion in the squad. So they're working. Yeah, I think it just comes down to working more as a team rather than relying solely on individual ability.
All right, let's move forward after that disappointment against Liverpool. They only had 3 days before they played their next match, Sam. Tough match on the road against a Villa club that's in form. Coutinho has added a lot of spark to their attack. They seem to be kind of gelling, especially on that side of the ball, but just really composed 1-0 victory. So even though with the short week going on the road, and you think there might be a letdown after the loss, that actually they showed a lot of grit. And of course they were missing Aaron Ramsdale. They had to start Bernd Leno. Lots of places to want to start. Let's start with Coutinho. It was impressive to me that we looked up. I think I heard an announcer say sometime about the 25th minute that he had like maybe one touch on the ball at that point. It seemed that Arsenal had a plan of like, we're taking him out. We're going to play our match, and part of it is we're going to take away your strength. And he was not a factor really at all at any point.
No, exactly. And that goes down to the manager and the team's tactics. I think that before the game, we had one training session. We had a rest day, one training session, and I imagine that we would have had the analytics as well, possibly on the rest day, sent out to the squad for them to study. So realistically, I think that falls down to the manager and the coaching staff to say, look, this is what we need to do to nullify Coutinho. And I think that we done that to a T, especially in the first half. Second half, he was finding a few pockets. But ultimately, we took away their biggest creative threat. Bundia as well was someone that a lot of Arsenal fans were clamouring for. Look bang average. Essentially, we took a very good Villa side, took away their main strengths, isolated their striker, and made them look like a bang average team in the first half. And that's down to our pattern of play. We're not looking at just what we can do. We're also looking now at how can we affect the opposition? How can we disrupt how they play? How can we make them adapt to how we're playing? So essentially, it works well. I don't know if you guys would agree with this. Actually, I think we've done it against every single team in one way or another across this season, even the big teams. In certain halves, you got Man City first half, Liverpool first half. They've adapted to how we play. Then they've tweaked their system. Obviously, due to the quality that prevailed in the end. But I think against Villa, they didn't have enough quality. I think that potentially we could have had two or three more. But it comes down to Saka again, ghosting in, being a bit like Arjen Robben for Chelsea back in the day. He would drift in from the wing, find himself in the centre of goal. Ball would ricochet to him or fall to him, and then it's either a controlled finish or a half volley. So I think that it's quite evident the model that Saka's following, and I think that is quite a good game plan of how we invert our wingers to be in pockets where they're going to be effective.
And to follow your point, Jacob, several opportunities where they could have gotten that second goal. Thinking specifically of real nice cross from Saka. I think it was from Saka. I forget if it was Saka or Cedric, I think it was from Saka, to it wasn't sure. We had Lacazette and Emile Smith Rowe kind of converging in the same place. It seemed like they collided and we each took the ball away from each other. They had an open goal if they could have pushed, just kind of deflected it cross goal. Emi Martinez was frozen, so that could have been, probably should have been the first goal.
Yeah, I mean, we carved out chances on that one. I think if I remember it, I think that was actually Smith Rowe getting a bit eager and cutting across Lacazette rather than the other way around.
That came so quickly too. I think that was like the 5th minute of the match. It was very, very quick.
Yeah, and I think recently we have been making quite fast starts to games. We've been going, we're not going to give the opposition chance to settle and start playing their game. We are going to start fast, put them on the back foot, which, you know, you go back a season or two and we were second half Arsenal. We were going in 1-0 down at the break and having to come back every second half. So it's nice to see us trying to get on the front foot and control a game quite early on and just not letting the opposition settle. You know, it pretty much every game recently, the team we've been playing has needed half time to tweak and regroup and everything like that.
Stay with that though. You know, you just talked about the early start. I think one thing that stood out for me though is the strong finish, because I know that, you know, Gerrard was putting on replacements at about the 60th minute and then the 70th minute and the 80th minute, trying one. Let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try this. Really, it wasn't until Coutinho's free kick, really the last touch of the game, that I was fearful that they might score. It was amazing to me that all that time, all those changes, all that shuffling, they were producing nothing.
No, and our defense was absolutely solid. Midfielders and defense, like, they just worked so well together. That box, you know, it barely got threatened, and you know, it was a good free kick from Coutinho right at the end, but it was going to take something special to beat us. I think the only moment of like concentration lapse we had in the game was, I believe, Ollie Watkins got free in the box and hit the post. But other than that, the defense worked brilliantly. Unfortunately, I think part of the reason we started coming in under more and more pressure was the attacking subs we made. Unfortunately, were not helping us get the ball out at all on this occasion. And Katia just tripped over the ball, you know, losing possession and things like that. So the defense had to be good. And I think the attacking subs is one of the reasons teams do tend to come back into the game a little bit more, because when you take off Saka or Lacazette, for all his faults and criticisms, we don't have those outballs anymore, which then starts inviting pressure onto us. So hopefully next season we won't even see these kind of late attacks from the other team and putting pressure on us.
A couple of items. We can take this in two different directions, because after the match, a couple of issues. Sam, let's start with Granit Xhaka, who again was given, let's say, a very hasty yellow card. Was lectured when he got his card from the referee. He pointed out, you made 3 fouls. You made one over here, made one over two, one over here, and all of us sitting in front of our televisions are shaking our shrugging our shoulders and saying, where? And as you said, Granit Xhaka saying the same thing.
Yeah, we've spoken about this so many times. Granit Xhaka's got a preconceived reputation before referees start the games. They just think, oh, he's going to do something stupid. He's going to do something. That challenge is a bit of a stupid one. Like, not from him, but like in terms of the referee, because I actually think he was fouled first. And whilst trying to win the ball back, he's done exactly what happened to him in the first instance, just because the player's littler. He's then given the foul to the Villa player. And then Granit's been trying to yellow, and the referee clearly said it's a totting up. You can see him pointing, going 1, 2, 3. But our statistics and any of the game statistics for Granit Xhaka said that he made one foul, which was that foul. So, for the love of God, I do not know where the other 2 fouls come from. And I'm just going to say it plain as day. The corruption's clear to see, and the agenda is clear to see on a weekly basis with Arsenal and the referees. But people always look at that and go, "Oh, it's not just you." No, it's not just us. It's across the league. The referees were incompetent. I'm glad Mike Dean's fucking off at the end of the season. The sooner the majority of these referees in this league, the better. But yeah, the standard of refereeing in this league is shoddy at best.
Let's stay with Xhaka, though, the player, because it does seem that, I mean, commentators, I've talked to friends about this other off our group, but the commentators on the match were coming on this, that Arsenal, certainly part of this improvement is they feel, as you were talking about it during the break, they came out with more cohesion, that their press works much better. We see how Partey is given that freedom and how he's working. But Xhaka, as a consequence of the backline playing so high, he seems to be playing much higher. He's been given a much more offensive role. He's not being caught out in the middle on counterattacks where he was lurking deeper the way he was in the past. And so, maybe he's not the best setup man, but he's playing a system that just seems much better suited to his skill set right now.
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say it's better to his skill set, because I still think that primarily he's a not defensive, a deep lying midfielder and starts play from deep. But with him being up the pitch, we're less liable to lose the ball, and it's straight through onto our defense. Then you've got Thomas Partey there as well, Erdegaard working back. I think that when Xhaka does give the ball away, it's up the pitch as well, so it's less danger. But ultimately, I think that Arteta's already planning for next season in terms of the system that we're playing now, and he really wants to get somebody in to that Xhaka role that can carry the ball, is athletic, has good defensive skills as well. So and just also score goals. That basically somebody that can do everything in that left hand side. So I think we'll see some interesting names come up in relation to that. But with Granit Xhaka, you gotta give props where props are due, because he's done well there. Depending on whether he's here in the summer or not is a different story. If he's not, then yeah, thanks for that. But I think that it's time to move on from him, and him, if he is to remain, that he has to be a squad player, not a starter.
All right. Let's talk about the other issue, Jacob. Everybody was talking about it immediately after the match. We're talking about it in real time. We're talking about the fouls and just the accumulated fouls that Bukayo Saka has to face week in and week out, and it really kind of reached a head early in this match after he scored his goal, took a really brutal blow. It was a slide tackle onto his ankle, onto like the back of his foot, like his heel. Stayed down for quite some time. Some very eyebrow-raising comments from Steven Gerrard afterwards of whether it was legal or not, whether it was sporting or not. But in the bigger picture, it does seem that while Bukayo Saka has certainly put himself in the running for consideration of, say, Young Player of the Year in Europe or certainly in the league, he's certainly staying with the theme of the refs and Granit Xhaka. He's not getting that level of protection, or certainly that level of respect from officials week to week.
No, and there are certain players in the league that it just seems to be almost like okay to just kick them off the park. And teams are clever about it. They don't just have the fullback taking them out constantly. That draws attention. They were rotational fouling. They had about 3 or 4 different players taking in turns just to chop Saka down. And it's a tactic that other players in the league have previously got or still do get. I mean, Wilfred Zaha is one who he's chopped down week after week. I think I saw a statistic earlier. Saka has been fouled 54 times or something this season, and he's amongst the top 3, I believe, of most foul players. But you had Zaha out on 90 something, like being fouled 90 something times. And that's not what the level we want to get to with Saka. But these types of players who are able to take on men and beat them both inside and outside, the ruling seems to be it is okay to kick them and foul them, and we're not going to do anything about it. And Gerard's comments about, oh, I've had 16 operations, I got metal plates in my hips, and you've just got to get used to it. I mean, surely a player who has had 16 operations and metal plates in his hips should be saying that actually, maybe at times, we need to protect the players and not have our best players on the operating table all the time. And obviously, everyone's dug up comments about he called for protection while he was manager of Rangers for his players. So I think that was just showing the whole tribal aspect of football. He was just backing Villa to the hilt, regardless of what was going on. But it is a concern. Saka, his reputation is growing and growing fast. You see it in that he is no longer left one-on-one. It's multiple players. And hopefully, we know Arteta is getting on at the rest for various reasons. And hopefully we can solve this issue because, we don't want a situation where, like Zaha, it's okay just to kick him off the pitch and be done with him.
Now, Sam, let's stay with this a little bit longer because I know that it's an issue certainly here in the States and in other leagues, in the NBA primarily, where there is for decades talk of a quote unquote star system, and that young stars earn their way into this, and they get that respect and they get that protection, and the league is very kind of tight-lipped about it, but the understanding is, well, these are the stars. People pay big money. People want to see the stars, and so as a league, we're going to take care of our stars. But Bukayo Saka is becoming a star, and he's becoming a star not only for Arsenal, but certainly for the English national team. At what point do you think he earns that? Jacob, why don't you take this one?
Sorry, I've missed the end of that question.
Here he comes.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Reliving that file in your head just put you out. At what point, we obviously want the games officiated fairly, right? I think that's our best hope. But at the same time, we don't want to see the stars of the league, the stars of the game, as Jacob was pointing out, on the operating table. At what point does Bukayo Saka, given his value to his club, to the league, to world football, but certainly to his national team, earn that at least? It seems he's getting less protection than maybe you should. Or just what we might call it an equal level of, or a level of respect. Let's put it that way.
I think he's already earned it. It's already earned it now, and it goes down to the standard of the refereeing. We see in the video game him asking for more protection at half time. I think that it's down to the referees to give him that protection, a bit like Jack Wilshere as well. Back in the day, that's their type of games. They run at players, they go past players, and frankly, the way that Saka gets past players already, he's then getting booted. Like the one that strikes me is the MacArthur one against Palace. where the ball's long gone, and you think to yourself, okay, that's a straight red, and then it's a yellow card, and you just think, how is that the case? Like, it's I don't know. It's the standard of officiating. I don't think that is right, and I don't think that Saka will get that protection, sadly, and ultimately it'll be to the detriment of the league.
Brings up a whole other can of worms that we're not going to talk about. But if you haven't seen the news, Mike Dean announced that he is retiring from active officiating. He might be going to the VAR side of things, but he is no longer going to be on the pitch meting out cards and meting out decisions. Yes, I think we can all say a thanks to the football gods for that development. Gentlemen, Jacob, come back to you. All right, so the club on a nice run. Liverpool result aside, 6 wins from 7, 18 points from a possible 21 since they came back from Dubai break. It seems that they have, coming out of that break, 3. There are no easy games, but manageable games. They're going to play Palace first out of the shoot, and then a couple of other, I think, beatable teams before. Then they have that two-step. I think everybody's looking at it of Chelsea and United in the span of a week. What do you do right now? You just are you just hoping that everybody comes out of the international break healthy? Or what's the manager doing? Because the manager seems every time they've had an international break this season, or they've had a COVID break, they went to the Middle East, he's taken incredible advantage of these breaks, and he's had his team ready to just roll right out of the gate once play resumed.
He has. However, this one might be a bit different for him because, and it's to his credit as well, because of the form we've been showing, we have had more players called up for international duty than we have had previously in the season. So beforehand, Xhaka would go and Partey would go. Saka's gone, but now, we've got Smith Rowe, Ben White, they're all going. So he may find it harder to work with, the whole team like he has been doing. But, that'd be a new thing for Arteta to learn as well in his development as a coach. The better we do and the better players we get, the less time he's actually going to get on the training pitch and working with these players. So we might not see these big gains that we have previously seen just because of that. But he has so far made great use of these breaks. And it might, although we might not see it with the first teamers, maybe some of these squad players, it might be a big benefit for, because they're going to get more, they're going to get focused on more during this period, trying to get them, up the scratch. Like, we haven't seen Sambi for a while, and I think that's for good reason. But, more work can be done with him about the role we want him to play and the skill set we need him to show. So it might be that the squad players benefit most from this international break rather than the first teamers like we've previously seen. However, I am sure we're going to need at least one of these squad players, quite actively before the end of the season. So if they can come in and do a great job, then it'll still be very much worthwhile.
2 names come to mind for me, Sam, and I don't know if I would characterize them as squad players. I guess in this unit they are, but Tomiyasu should be coming back. He should finally be healthy when they come back from the international break. But the other one, it appears we might see some more starts from Bernd Leno. Just I don't know the severity of Ramsdale's injury, but what do you see as their roles coming back? Certainly with the initial games once play resumes.
I think in regards to Tomiyasu, he's been training since Liverpool, I believe. So international break was too soon for him. I believe that they'll be putting him through his paces over these 2 weeks to ensure that his calf injury has subsided. And I think coming the other side of that, obviously with Cedric out with the Portugal national team, I think that that's credit to him first and foremost. But I think that he may find his place under threat when he gets back. In regards to Leno, again depends on the severity of Ramsdale's injury. I think that Leno's done well when he stepped in at Villa. But the one thing that pointed out for me in that game is still his distribution. It wasn't the best, and you can really tell the difference that Ramsdale gives us compared to Leno. Leno is a shot stopper. He hasn't got the full all round package, so to speak. Um, so I think Leno understands what his role is. Coming up to the end of the season, if Ramsdale's fit, he's going to start because he is number one.
Okay, and in some ways, it might be a blessing for Arsenal that he's going to stay back and just work on rehabbing Aaron Ramsdale, rather than being risked more and more in these international matches. Jacob, you get the final word this week. I mean, I guess we're happy that they're here. They're happy they get a break. I almost like cover my eyes when the international matches come up because the results to me are just stay healthy. I don't know how you feel about it, but especially with this club on its current form, it's like just don't overuse Odegaard. Don't overplay Saka. I don't want to hear Smith Rowe coming back with some kind of knock. Just nothing. So I know that's impossible to ask, but that's my wish.
No, and I think every club fan is the same. Like, international breaks don't have a big following in general nowadays. Tournaments, all for them, absolutely brilliant, but breaking up a season, I'm enjoying watching Arsenal. I don't want to watch England take on San Marino again, or whoever we're playing. And every club fan, not just Arsenal fans, all they can hope for is players come back ready to see out the season, particularly in this kind of last run in, 10 games left and all that sort of thing. You want your best players out there seeing you through to the end and putting in performances. So yeah, let's just hope Harry Maguire's not putting in any naughty tackles on Saka in training.
All right, Sam, when they come back, 10 matches. After Palace, we could say they're 3/4 of the way home. 9 matches. They're almost on parity with everybody. I think they and Spurs have one game in hand on United. I think Chelsea might be in the same boat, but certainly on City and all the West Ham and the teams around them. It seems everything's kind of floating into parity, and we're just going to see them run. Big matches still coming up. They've got to play West Ham. They've got to play Spurs. They've got to play Chelsea. They've got to play United. So 4 of those 10 are against the teams that they're fighting with. So formula or is it just one game at a
time? As Arteta says, cup finals every game. I think in terms of top 4, as long as we get a point at the people in and around us and beat everybody else, top 4's in our hands. Right, there's no way for them to get past that. Yeah, so essentially I've got confidence in this side to be able to do so. And I think that if we win, say, against West Ham, we win against United, draw at Tottenham, I think that's more than enough to get top 4. And then obviously just win everything else. Chelsea, we could probably take a loss on that as well. But as long as we win everything else, top four's ours.
Well, and Jacob, again, a final word for you. I think it speaks well for them that certainly in this calendar year, their 2 losses are against City and Liverpool. And we know we came out of those as much as they played them, certainly for the first half, the first 60 minutes kind of even, or arguably against City, they were the better club. against the other clubs, they really are taking care of business. And even though against Spurs are around, Spurs are there, West Ham's there, United is there, even Chelsea, I don't see, maybe with the exception of Chelsea, Chelsea's got a loaded lineup. I don't see that man for man, any one of those other teams can come in and say, oh, we should beat them. We're better than them. Arsenal has at least raised itself to that point where they can say, well, we're not City yet. We're not on par with them. We're not on par with Liverpool. But everybody else, we've got our shot.
Yeah, I mean, every single game we've got left is winnable. Now, I'm under no illusions. We will not win them all because this is football. There is going to be a slip up somewhere. But, I mean, the other teams around us haven't shown the consistency to win every game in this run-in either. So, yeah, every single game, despite being tough games, we should be looking at going, there's no reason we can't win that. Take our game to them, play our best, see what happens. And I do firmly believe we will get enough to see us over the line. As Sam says, it's in our hands. It's going to be tough, but we don't have any other competitions other than some lovely scheduling from the Premier League. We'll be playing once a week. Although it will be interesting to see where they fit this Spurs game in that's still to be rearranged.
I get the feeling it's going to be very, very late.
Mm-hmm.
I think the league is hoping that those two teams are kind of battling it out, and that'll be a very kind of winning you're in and losing you're out stakes.
Yes.
They would love that from a programming perspective. So.
Yeah, Sky trying to create their own narrative there, I think.
Well, all right, gentlemen. Again, good news on the whole. Good health, good results. Top four with game in hand. Although they're 3 points up on Spurs and they don't have a game in hand on them, but they have games in hand on United and West Ham. So I'd much rather be sitting pulling at this badge than in any of theirs. So at this point in the season, any final thoughts? Any final words? Have we missed something in this kind of circuit of the subject, Sam?
I don't think so. I think we've more or less covered everything.
Jacob, anything you want to add?
No, I don't think so.
All right. So again, rub your rabbit's foot, light your candles, say your prayers, whatever you do. Good luck, good health for the boys in the squad. We will see. I guess we will come back next week. Let's talk about the transfer window next week, since there are no matches to discuss. I imagine the papers will start churning things around. So join us then. We'll start looking. We talked about who that midfielder might be. Sam kind of touched on it a little tiny bit in the last match, but next week we probably have several names. There's certainly striker targets to talk about. A lot of striker targets to talk about. Might they need a winger if Pepe is sold? Still a lot to discuss. Who might be if Cedric needs regular football, who's that right back going to be? Join us next week here on Daily Gooner Pod, and we'll take a measure of all those topics. For Sam and for Jacob in London, I'm Raphael in the United States. We bid you a good evening.